All right, and welcome to part 2 of the Parent College Kickoff podcast. As a reminder, I will be talking very quickly. It's a lot of information, so please feel free to pause and rewind if you have missed something. All right, so terms to know. Early decision. This means that your student is applying early, usually a November 1st deadline, and that if they are accepted to the school, they will be expected to go. It is a binding contract. You can see that 27% of our students applied early decision for the class of 2012, and of those students, 44% were accepted, so not bad odds applying early decision. Early action is also a November 1st deadline, but it is not binding, so your students will have until May 1st to let that college know if they plan to attend, including all of the early options, which are early decision, early action, restricted, single choice early action, which just means it's not binding, but you can only apply to one, and then rolling admissions, where a committee meets several times throughout the year, so your student can really apply anytime. That made up 84% of the class of 2012, so we fully expect that your students are probably going to apply early in some fashion. Does it help my chances to apply early? And the answer to that question is it depends on the school. You can see from this slide taken from Family Connection that if you apply to Duke early decision, again, that's the binding option, your chances of being accepted are much, much higher. But if we move on to the next slide, Washington University in St. Louis, it makes almost no difference to apply early. So you have access to all of these statistics for each school via Family Connection, so please take a look and see, especially if your student is interested in applying early to any of them. The following slide comes from NACAC, which is a governing body for college admissions counseling. And they asked representatives from different admissions offices what they rated the highest of importance in decisions, in making admissions decisions. And you can see that grades in college prep courses, which for TJ is going to include our AP and post-AP classes, those are going to be one of the most important things. Strength of curriculum, similar. How many AP courses, how many post-AP courses, how many challenging courses did you take? Admissions test scores are very important, and grades in all courses. So you can sort of see that the numbers and the letters associated with your student's application are going to be the most important. But you can also see that they take considerable, they put considerable weight on essays and extracurriculars and recommendations, the other things that sort of make up your student's package and make them look human. So those are also important, but really the number one thing should be the grades, not the GPA. The letter grades, not the GPA. Moving on, it really is a numbers game, and so as I just mentioned, grades in core courses versus GPA. The GPA, we all know because there's so much extra weighting for the honors and AP courses, the GPA is inflated and often not really reflective of what your student knows or what they've accomplished. So the grade is a better indicator of whether a student has done well. Many schools have actually told us that, flat out, that the GPA is worthless. So focus on the letters, not the numbers. Obviously the SAT is important. You've got the reasoning test, which includes the math, verbal, and writing sections, and then subject tests. We're going to need at least 2. One in math level 2, which goes through pre-calculus, and then occasionally schools will want 3. You can find this out on the individual school admissions website. The ACT test is going to be a maximum of 36. As we mentioned before, it's becoming increasingly popular. And then advanced placement exam scores, which your students will take in May, those will be used to figure out if they earn college credit for the classes that they've taken here. So RU, whole package, other things that students are looking for. Again, academic challenging curriculum, grades, upward trend, intellectual curiosity, creativity, commitment, diversity. Passion, do they have things that they're really excited about? Personal integrity, maturity, ability to contribute, willingness to contribute, potential, leadership, and service. The majority of these things are going to come across, 1, in the transcript, and 2, in your students' essays and letters of recommendation. So you need to make sure that your students are presenting all of those things in the best light. I know at this point in their life, your kids are going to have a really hard time talking about themselves and the things that they've accomplished. They tend to not like to brag about themselves, but if there's a time to brag, this is it. They need to make sure that anything relevant, anything that is going to help an admissions committee evaluate them, ends up somewhere on the application. So the elephant in the room is often, why is it so hard to get into an Ivy? We've heard from the schools that the Ivies could go through 2 to 3 times their applicant pool and still have the same highly qualified class. We've been told many times that all of your students, regardless of grades and GPA, because of their excellent education, being a TJ student, they're going to be admissible to any school, but they're not going to get in necessarily because most TJ students will be qualified, but not every Ivy is willing to become TJ North. They're just not going to let every kid in. Ivies often will put a lot of emphasis on minority status. They like their athletes. They love legacies, and that means whether or not mom and dad went to that school for undergraduate education. They also admit quite a few international students. So while your students may fit into one or more of these categories, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to get in. And I'll mention something else, another slide down the road here. So what should your student be doing during summer and senior year? Your student should be narrowing their list. Again, our average is 7, and we always say we'll sleep better at night if they have at least one safety that they would be very happy and proud to say that they're going to. They should check out that Common App account starting in July, familiarize themselves with supplemental essays, which they can find on the Common App or on the other schools' application pages. They need to secure teachers' recommendations if they haven't done that already. Again, they should do that before school gets out for the summer. They should check in with their counselor, and if they need additional help beyond their individual interview time, they're welcome to stop by. And then they should start requesting transcripts in the fall of senior year, and we will meet with the kids again to sort of explain to them the process for that. Things that you should be doing in the fall: you should be attending our senior parent night, which is explaining the transcript process and sort of just a refresher of some of the things that you may have forgotten over the summer. And then you should also be filling out the FAFSA in January of their senior year, and the CSS profile if you're looking for financial aid. At this point in time, you're welcome to go on the FAFSA website and use one of their forecasters to figure out what your expected financial contribution may be in the coming year. So we'd like to emphasize that making the college match is a process. We understand that you may bump heads with your students, you may disagree, you may be looking for compromise, and that your vision of what they should be doing with their life and where they should be attending school may not match what they want. But we do assure you that your student will be okay. They will have somewhere to go, and we hope that while your input is important and needs to be used, and we do say this to the kids, that they really need to be the ones making the final decision. And the counselors are all here to help. Students have an open door. Anytime the door's open, they're welcome to come in. And parents, we would request that if you want to make an appointment with us, that you give us a call or send us an email. So some perspective. This goes back to why is it so hard to get into an Ivy. This is true of all colleges. Selection versus admission. Again, all of your students are admissible to any school, but they're not necessarily going to be selected because there's a part of the process that your students, unfortunately, 1, will never know about, and 2, have no control over, and that is that the colleges are trying to build a freshman class. They are looking for diversity of interests, diversity of backgrounds, diversity of faces, and oftentimes we don't know what the makeup of the current campus is, and so, if they're losing a particular type of student through graduation, then they're going to look to make that up through the incoming freshman class. And if your student happens to fit a profile of a student that they accepted lots of the previous year, then unfortunately that doesn't bode well for your student when they apply. But again, these are things we're never really going to know, so we ask the students to present themselves as best they possibly can, and that always increases their chances. The X factor, again, that's just the piece that we're not going to know about. And beyond the walls of TJ, your students, while they are judged in context, and we do send information about TJ to every college, they are competing against a national and international applicant pool. But we would like to remind you that the journey is more important than the destination, and your students will learn so much about themselves in this process, and you probably will too. So parents, we would like to ask you to think about the following questions and make sure that you're approaching your child in a calm and considerate way. We ask you to think about, do I allow and encourage my son or daughter to explore new experiences and ideas? Do I tolerate opinions, ideals, and values that are different from my own? Do I understand how my son or daughter is handling the transition from high school to college? And am I available for my son or daughter to express his or her feelings and concerns about the transition process? We would just encourage you all to make it okay for your student to come and express how they're feeling to you, because you are the experts in your kids and you are their best resource for support and for bouncing ideas off of. And so we just want you to think about making your home the best environment for your students to share what they're thinking with you. So in the end, if you have questions about anything at all, please don't hesitate to contact your child's counselor. We are here for you, and if we don't know the answer to something, we will help you find it. So please contact us with anything at all. I hope you have found this podcast informative and helpful, and we wish you a very smooth and happy journey in the college process. Thanks for listening.